Hi, everyone, and welcome to our presentation, Executive Functioning, Managing Schoolwork and Everyday Life. My name is Samantha Feinman. I'm the Director of New Frontiers in Learning. Just to give you a little bit of a background about our organization, we are an academic, executive functioning, and social support program for students in middle school, high school, and college, as well as young adults seeking employment and independent living skills. We are very proud to say that we're going into our 5th year now and are servicing students in New York City, Long Island, Westchester, Northern New Jersey, as well as remotely with students nationally and internationally. So we're very excited to present to you on executive functioning today. We really feel like we've learned so much about executive functioning over the past 5 years and are really happy to share that information with our colleagues, with others, with students and parents as well. We have been living and breathing the transition from high school to college for the past 5 years and see the same patterns of deficits in students as they transition through high school to college with executive functioning issues. And it's really not a question of doing the work. As you guys know, the students we work with can do the work. It's much more of a question of accessing the work. So they have a difficult time getting themselves from point A to point B when presented with a problem. And that's when those executive functioning skills come into play. So we see students having a tough time with things like getting to class on time, meeting deadlines, finding help when they need it, advocating for accommodations or extra help, and that's all having to do with their executive functioning skills. So the goals of this presentation are really to discuss what is executive functioning, how do we rely on our executive functioning skills in our everyday lives, how do we develop skills and accommodate for deficits in executive functioning, and we're going to wrap up the webinar with a time for you guys to have to provide questions, and we'll provide you with answers. You'll have the opportunity to participate in the Q&A by typing in your questions in the question box, and we will be typing our responses back to you. If for some reason we can't get to everyone's questions at the end of the webinar, we will certainly send you a response in an email as soon as possible after the webinar. So let's go discuss that question. What is executive functioning? And if we look at the definition of executive functioning, it's the higher order processes that assist one in being able to monitor and control their thoughts and actions and facilitate goal-directed behavior. So when an individual has a goal, their executive functioning skills help them to monitor and control their thoughts and actions in reaching that goal. So a lot of people refer to executive functioning as the CEO of the brain. Executive functions really help your brain to organize information and then to make decisions to get to a goal. So executive functioning has several different sub-skills or components to it. One of the first areas is the area of planning and organization. So if you think about planning and organization, it's essentially making and keeping plans. An example I like to use is getting ready for the school day. And it's something that we see a lot of our students struggle with. There's a lot that goes into getting ready for the school day. You have to wake up, you have to have breakfast, you have to get dressed, you have to take a shower, you have to make sure your bag is packed, you have to make sure you have everything you leave before you leave the house, and you have to leave the house in time to get to the place that you're going to. And somewhere along those lines, sometimes our students break down, and they may be persistently late to class, they may be persistently unprepared, and that may not be because they're lazy or don't care, but because they're having deficits in the areas of planning and organization in terms of their executive functioning skills. Another area is working memory. And so working memory is really being able to remember pieces of information. And then taking it further, once incorporating those pieces of information, actually being able to use those pieces of information to make decisions moving forward when presented with a problem. So if you think about working memory in the context of academics, you, working memory is required to do a skill such as writing notes, but it's also required for something like how to handle missing a deadline. Because if you've missed a deadline in the past, you should have some prior knowledge of how you handled that situation to resolve it. So if you come across an issue, a similar issue, you need to rely on your working memory in order to figure out how to solve similar problems in the future that you've had in the past. Again, if a student has executive functioning deficits, they might be poor note takers, but at the same time, they might not rely on those working memory skills to be able to help them make decisions on things moving forward. So they may persistently make the same mistakes, and that again is not being lazy or not caring. It's because they have poor working memory and they can't relate prior knowledge to making decisions moving forward. Another area of skills, components in terms of executive functioning are prioritization, multitasking, and just general overall time management skills. So keeping track of time as well as completing things on time can be issues for students that have executive functioning issues. And this is where, this falls into, is that being able to prioritize, multitask, and manage your time overall. So an example of being able to prioritize and multitask is kind of looking at what all of your responsibilities are in terms of assignments and figuring out what to do first. If a student has a test due on Wednesday and a written assignment due on Thursday and a presentation on Friday, they need to be able to figure out what they need to do first in order to get everything done. When presented with 3 different things due in a short period of time, many times the students freeze. They don't know where to start. They don't know what is a priority, and they can't move themselves forward in terms of getting the work done, and may need support in developing those prioritization and multitasking skills. In terms of initiation and self-monitoring, we're looking at the students having the ability to look for help or to look for more information as they're monitoring how they're doing when it is needed. So a good example of this is being able to have a plan, take the leap of actually completing a task, completing it, and if they hit a bump in the road, knowing where to ask for help. So a good example that we come across with a lot of our students is that they get an assignment that seems very overwhelming. It has a lot of different steps. It has a lot of words explained in a lot of verbiage, and the students are required to figure out exactly what they need to do to get this larger assignment done. They get bombarded and overwhelmed by the larger picture and have a tough time picking out exactly what they need to do in order to take the leap to complete the task. So again, anxiety takes over instead of problem solving, and they shut down rather than taking the leap and persisting forward through the assignment. Again, another area which we'll talk about more in depth further along in the webinar, that this is an area where we certainly can help them to develop the skills necessary to be able to complete the assignment, persist through it, and then stop when they hit an obstacle and know where to turn to ask for help to get over the obstacle. Last but not least is the component of inhibition and impulsivity. Inhibition is your ability or one's ability to control their impulses and stop a behavior at an appropriate time. So this is really self-regulation strategies. The opposite of inhibition is impulsivity, the inability to stop yourself from doing something at the time before you. It's doing before thinking, basically. Impulsivity. And so a lot of times we see in classes that our students may disagree with a peer in their class, or they may disagree with a teacher or a professor, and they they, without thinking, will take on that person in a very aggressive way without stopping and thinking about how their words are going to affect the overall interpersonal relationship with that person. So again, another area where we see that our students sometimes may struggle and where we offer support. So one thing I want to stress about executive functioning is that executive functioning skills are really universal. Executive functioning deficits can be demonstrated globally, and this means that it can be demonstrated in a variety of different areas in your life that require executive functioning skills in order to accomplish them. So if we look at some main areas in our lives, we see that many times our students have executive functioning deficits in more than one of these or all of these areas. So academics, employment, social opportunities, independent living. So if you think about examples from these specific areas in terms of academics, students need to be able to complete long-term assignments at school. That requires executive functioning. In terms of employment, individuals need to be able to manage employment projects in their place of employment, and again requires executive functioning skills. Social opportunities, they need to be able to make and keep plans with friends. And independent living, they need to do everything from laundry to grocery shopping to paying bills to managing a budget. All of these skills require executive functioning skills. And if we see students that demonstrate executive functioning deficits, all of these areas could be affected. So now, in terms of some of the research, executive functioning skills appear in the first few years of life. And so we see that even before the age of 2, children are demonstrating executive functioning skills such as working memory, inhibitory control, and task shifting. As students develop and mature through adolescence and young adulthood, their executive functioning skills also continue to develop and mature. And executive functioning skills in general have been identified as the best predictor of school readiness and success. And if you think about it through the lens of the transitions through school, when children are young in an elementary school, they primarily are in the same class with the same teacher all day. And they have the capacity to get very used to the same routines and the same behaviors, and the teachers get used to the students' routines and behaviors. But then as they transition from elementary school to middle school, we see a shift and a departmentalization of academics and content. And students now at the middle school and high school level need to shift their focus from one routine and one teacher to several routines through several different teachers, and as well as getting used to things like different types of responsibilities, using a locker, using online learning systems, using different kinds of note-taking systems. Different teachers have different expectations and utilize different resources, and the students need to get used to being able to shift their focus of what their teachers are utilizing from one environment to the next. The demand of this increases exponentially when the students get to college. Middle school and high school is still providing a lot of structure and support, and what ends up happening at the college level is students become fully responsible for monitoring and advocating for what they need to succeed. So in middle school and high school, where they may be receiving their accommodations by law, at the college level, they have access to those types of supports, but need to be the ones to advocate for that, set it up themselves, and monitor closely that they're utilizing all of the supports that are available and they're eligible for. So we see through the developmental lifespan that the need for a solid structure of executive functioning skills is essential. The silver lining is that as executive functioning skills develop, students have an increased chance of succeeding in an educational environment that is more demanding. And we know that students' executive functioning skills can develop. But the next question is, how do they develop? How do they develop these skills? So before moving into intervention, I'd like to just talk a little bit about best practices and utilizing multiple sources of information to find out and pinpoint what the student's strengths and relative obstacles are with regards to executive functioning. So it's really important to look at an individual's history, both at school or at home, in terms of their executive functioning skill set, as well as looking at standardized behavior rating scales. A very common one that we see used often in the field is the Behavior Rating Inventory of Executive Functioning, or the BRIEF. It is a questionnaire that is given many times by neuropsychologists or clinical psychologists when they are putting together a neuropsychological or a psychoeducational, and provides a lot of very good information, both from the parent and the teacher perspective, of how the students are functioning in terms of executive functioning skills. It's also important to observe the student in both the home and in the school environment, again, to see how their executive functioning skills are playing out, as well as relying on other types of formal assessments that are completed through neuropsychological or the psychoeducational assessments. So again, it's just important to pinpoint those strengths and obstacles so that we can plan to implement intervention strategies based on what the students are struggling with. So when we're linking assessment to instruction, we have found it is very helpful to balance skill development with accommodation. And what I mean by that is when a student comes to us that has executive functioning deficits, they need a combination of direct instruction on teaching those executive functioning skills, as well as accommodations and environmental supports to assist them in being able to perform tasks that require executive functioning, so that they can feel a sense of success academically while they're still developing these skills. We always say that if a student comes to us and they've been struggling with executive functioning issues for 17 years, it's not going to change overnight. So they need a balance between skill development and direct instruction and accommodating the environment and supporting the environment so they can access the curriculum and feel a sense of success. But in terms of that direct instruction and skill development, we really want to follow a model of setting goals and then scaffolding, modeling, and providing guided practice towards independence of developing these skills. So what does that mean? Well, if we look at scaffolding, scaffolding is the level of support that we as experts are going to provide the student. It's building on what the student already knows by providing support to complete tasks that are too difficult to complete on their own. So if organizing their schoolwork, reading a syllabi, using an online learning system is out of their ability to complete on their own, our responsibility is to scaffold the teaching and learning process so that they understand how to utilize those systems. So scaffolding is looking at where the student is and what they can do independently, and taking it to the point of where they can't do things independently and modeling for them exactly how to do those things. So that modeling piece is really, I like to refer to it as cognitive modeling. It's bringing out of your mind what exactly you need to do in order to make something happen, or in order to solve a problem, or in order to organize a task, or in order to figure out what your priorities are. So putting this out externally for the student, they can see a model of the process that they need to follow in order to develop their executive functioning skills. The goal is that eventually, through modeling for them how they should be organizing things, how they should be structuring their time, how they should be prioritizing their assignments, that we're guiding them towards independence and an internalization of these systems, so that we're helping them, we're modeling, we're guiding them into doing it independently, and slowly backing ourselves out of the picture so that they do these things independently, because the processes become internalized. The final piece of it is, this has to do a lot with that self-monitoring piece, is that reflection and debriefing of skill development. So a student needs to learn and have modeled for them when something's working, why it's working. And if something's not working, why it's not working. And that teaches that self-monitoring piece, that reflection piece, that metacognition piece. We always use the example of, we consider ourselves quote-unquote experts when working with the students. Well, we know we've done our job when we see a shift from expert driving the sessions to the students driving the sessions. So an example is when we have students that come in that have very poor executive functioning skills, and maybe they're in their first semester of college, we say to them, what do you need to work on? And a lot of times their response is, I don't know. I don't know what to work on. I know I'm taking 5 classes, but I don't know what I need to do for each of those classes. And so we sit down with them, we break down the assignments, we prioritize the assignments, but not only are we doing it, we're doing it, modeling for them alongside with them, so they can see our process on the outside of what we focus on in order to organize and manage time. And then we see this amazing shift happen, that they'll come in and we'll say, what do you have to work on? And the students will say, oh, I have so much to do. I have a math test on Wednesday. On Thursday, I have a paper due. And on Friday, I have to do a presentation. But on Wednesday, I want to focus what's on due Wednesday, because Wednesday is going to come here faster than Thursday and Friday. And then we know we're doing our job. We know that we're seeing that shift from our modeling of how to develop executive functioning skills to their taking ownership over it and doing it themselves. So now I want to get a little bit more in depth into the specific areas of executive functioning. So let's look at planning and organization first. What can we do to help students to be effective planners? Well, essentially, planning is creating a roadmap of what you need to do to reach a goal or to complete a task. And so sometimes you have very long-term roadmaps, and sometimes you have very short-term roadmaps. But again, the students may have a difficult time actually creating and executing those roadmaps. So we, through guided practice, have to show them how to do this. So what does that look like? They have to create a daily homework plan. So many times they need a model of sitting and looking at what are you doing in each of your classes and what do you need to have accomplished by tomorrow. And that's your daily plan. That's your short-term task plan. And then you have these longer-term goals, these longer-term roadmaps, which are, so yes, tomorrow I need to have this done for the class, but 2 weeks from now I'm going to have a test. So they need to learn not only what do they need to do on a daily basis, but what do they need to do 2 weeks down the road, 2 months down the road, and so on and so forth. So that's the planning piece of it. The organization piece of it is actually assisting in creating and maintaining systems that keep track of information and materials that's important for them in their lives, for studying, for doing homework, for whatever purposes it may be. So this is helping the students to create beneficial systems for keeping track of class notes, for keeping track of their homework responsibilities, for keeping track of due dates and exams, and one-time or daily responsibilities. So thinking about planning an organization, the planning piece is knowing what I need to do. The organization piece of it is this is where I'm going to write it down, and this is where I'm going to keep it so that I have something to reference to know what I need to do tomorrow. So it's the what you need to know to do and how you're going to keep track of it, which is the planning and organization piece. In terms of working memory, again, when presented with a problem, students need to learn how to draw on past learning or experience in order to problem solve the current issue, as well as project solutions to future problems. So in terms of working memory, the utilization of environmental accommodations can be very helpful to help the students remember from day to day. And this is interconnected with that organizational piece. So this is the actual agenda or the notebook or the electronic calendar or the alarms that you're going to set in order to remind you to do things. So you have a plan of what you need to get done, you organize it in a place, and then you set reminders for yourself in order to remember that you need to do those things by a certain time. So all of these skills are interconnected, but they all have different components that are essential to being successful overall. The best recommendation when it comes to setting reminders and writing down due dates and keeping a place where you can a checklist of your daily to-do tasks. My best advice is to work with the student to see if doing this on a paper copy or doing it on an electronic resource like a cell phone or a tablet or a laptop is which one is more beneficial. Some students really need the multisensory piece of writing it down in a book. They like the feeling of being able to cross it off a list. I sure know I like to do that. I love to cross things off lists when I complete them. Other students like to use their cell phones or tablets or laptops to organize notes into folders, or to use their calendar to set reminders. So you really have to figure out what works best for each individual student, and then encourage them and help them to utilize whatever that resource you both agree on is helpful for them. Then we go into the area of prioritization, multitasking, and just overall general time management. So with prioritization and multitasking, it's really important to learn how to make decisions about what is important to focus on and what is not important to focus on in order to build a long-term plan. So you need to be able to figure out, if I have 3 things that I need to get done, what needs to get done first? And then how long am I going to give myself to get it done? And then when am I going to be able to move on to the next thing on my list? So prioritization, multitasking, and time management is really crucial. A lot of the time, we've noticed that our students have an inaccurate sense of time. And many times they either overestimate or underestimate how long it's going to take for them to do something. And so if you're underestimating how long it takes to do something, that results in not being able to get everything done that you want to get done. So it's really important to help students to develop a sense of time. And how long is 5 minutes? How long is 5 hours? Sometimes our students can get wrapped up in extracurricular activities that they think they've only been participating in for 15 minutes, but really 3 hours have gone by. Or they underestimate how long it's going to take to get from the Upper East Side to the financial district. So again, this all has to do with that sense of time. They need to develop a true sense of how long it takes to get places and to do things. In terms of initiation and self-monitoring, initiation we need to be scaffolding and task analyzing responsibilities, because that plays a major role in one's ability to start and persist through responsibilities. So if students are having a difficult time getting started on assignment and then completing it, we as support for them need to task analyze, break down their assignment into smaller pieces, help them figure out when each of those pieces should get done, hold them accountable for getting those pieces done on time, but also act as a scaffold and a model and guide them through getting those things completed until they move more towards independence. The self-monitoring piece is really that, again, that metacognitive self-reflection piece. Students need to learn how to ask and analyze the responses to the following questions after they've been successful or not successful with problem solving. What are the potential obstacles I will face in achieving my goal? So even before they start something, they need to proactively think about what are the obstacles that I may face and what types of supports can I proactively put in place in order to overcome those obstacles. So for instance, with our students, if they have a difficult time with writing and they have independent work to do with writing, then one of the obstacles they can overcome is maybe utilizing the writing center or utilizing the learning specialist at their school. But that's going to require them to ask for help, to seek out the help and ask for it. But sometimes creating that plan proactively before they hit the obstacle is very helpful. They need to know where and from whom they can get help, how they can receive the help, and what is working well and when can that be helpful in the future. So if studying in a certain way prior to an exam leads to a good grade, the students need to reflect upon that so that when the next exam comes, they can generalize that skill to another scenario. In comparison, if a student waits to the last minute to study, can't retain the information, and does poorly on an exam, they need to move forward with an understanding that they need to reflect on the fact that they shouldn't wait till the last minute to study and have a study plan put in place well before the exam takes place the next time around. And finally, with regards to inhibition and impulsivity, we're really looking at, helping the students to learn to think before they act by encouraging them to stop, evaluate a situation, and how their reaction could potentially impact the situation moving forward. So what really helps with inhibition many times is structure and setting up and meeting daily goals and holding students accountable for meeting those goals. It prevents the students from setting aside priorities and impulsively engaging in non-priority activities. If we're helping the students to set and meet daily goals, holding them accountable for meeting those goals, it provides them with that structure that they need in order to stay on task rather than procrastinate and spend impulsive time on things that aren't a priority in the moment. So lastly, I wanted to share with you some helpful resources that I know that we utilize often when working with students with executive functioning deficits. Some of these are workbooks that are really beneficial in terms of providing you with structure and worksheets to work on very specific executive functioning deficits with students in elementary, middle, high school, and beyond. So as we wrap up the presentation, I'd really like to take a moment to thank everybody for being part of it and encourage you that if you have a more specific question to please type it into the question box. And like I said before, we'll do our best to answer it. And if we can't get to you right away, we will certainly get back to you in an email as soon as possible. But again, thank you so much for your participation, and I hope that you found this webinar helpful and productive, and look forward to the next one.